Hello, my name is Alex from Swoosh English, and in this video, I'll be looking at the OET blog articles that I've put together. This one focusing specifically on speaking and maintaining fluency within the OET speaking exam. So the focus of this lesson will be on improving fluency within the context of the exam. Now, when entering the exam room, it's natural to start feeling nervous. Even the most proficient of speakers need time to settle down, focus, and relax before being able to show the true extent of their abilities in a foreign language. The OET is more generous than other exams in that it allows speakers a 2-minute unassessed warm-up before the exam proper begins, but it can still be challenging to keep those nerves under control. What this can lead to is slow, hesitant, uncertain speech with lots of pauses, lots of as we mentally search for the exact word, the exact expression, to avoid making any mistakes. While this can be good for our scores in relation to resources of grammar and expression, it can cause real problems in terms of achieving a high score in fluency. So here are some tips to reflect on in relation to how we can maintain our fluency while producing accurate language. The first tip is don't obsess over small errors. Slow speech, even if accurate, is speech which lacks fluency, and speech which lacks fluency comes across as unconfident and is difficult to listen to. It is much better to aim to speak at a natural pace at the risk of making grammatical errors than to slow your speech to a point where it's no longer fluent. Imagine this situation. You're at a reception desk and you ask the receptionist where the bathroom is. He replies, "It's down the corridor and on your left." The effect on the listener is going to be poor. I'm sure it was poor in that case. It seems clear that despite not making any grammatical errors in that example, the speaker is not confident in using English. Now imagine you ask the same question, but the response is so. "It's down the corridor and at your left." Now the first response is more accurate, but it was painfully lacking in fluency. The second response, despite the prepositional error at instead of on, was much more fluent and would leave a much better impression on the listener. Overall, it's much better to risk making these small errors than to slow your speech down to the point where you're not able to show the fundamental and vital skill of fluency. Tip 2, self-correct sometimes. One way in which we can address accuracy errors while maintaining fluency is via self-correction. So from the example I gave earlier, let's imagine a third situation in which the receptionist response to the bathroom query is, "It's down the corridor and on your left." Now the speaker has spoken at a natural fluent pace, and in self-correcting his mistake, he has demonstrated the ability to recognize and polish his own spoken language. This is an important skill which you will be credited for in the exam and which can help to maintain both fluency and accuracy. It is important not to overuse this technique, however, as using it too often starts to make your speech come across as unnatural. After all, no one wants to hear someone self-correcting every time they speak, but used appropriately and sparingly, this can be a very effective way of balancing your focus on the two skills. Tip 3, use discourse markers. An important way of demonstrating fluency is being able to use common speech expressions appropriately. Discourse markers, many examples of which you can see on the screen right now, are particularly important and useful for speaking because they help us to connect, organize, and manage what we say, as well as helping us to show our attitude to a particular idea or course of action. Discourse markers improve fluency because they make our speech clearer, more natural, and more accessible to the listener. Let's look at an example without any discourse markers. A patient has asked the doctor whether she recommends surgery. The doctor responds, "Yes, I recommend that you have surgery. It will take a long time to recover." Now, the content here is pretty clear, but the response seems strange. It comes across as somehow robotic. We're not sure exactly what the purpose of the second idea is. Is it contradicting the first? Or is it just informing the patient what the likely effect of surgery will be? Now imagine this response instead. Well, yes, surgery is my recommended option. However, do bear in mind that there will very likely be an extended recovery time. Now, you should have noticed some of the discourse markers being used there. Well is a discourse marker. However, which you can see on the screen, is another example of a discourse marker. Something is very likely. That's also a discourse marker qualifying a particular idea. And all of this information is very important because it helps us to express our attitude. Using these relatively simple phrases in our speech can help us come across as much more relatable and fluent when it comes to the exam. Finally, take control of the pause. In the words of the great Mark Twain, which you can see in front of you, the right word may be effective, but no word was ever as effective as a rightly timed pause. Speaking fluently doesn't mean never pausing. Rather, it means pausing at the right times. There'll be moments when it comes. Take control of the pause. In the great words of Mark Twain, the right word may be effective, but no word was ever as effective as a rightly timed pause. Speaking fluently doesn't mean never pausing. Rather, it means pausing at the right times. There'll be moments when it makes sense to pause, to allow your listener to take in certain information, or to help to emphasize a particularly important piece of information. A listener can easily detect the difference between a purposeless pause, such as with the bathroom example earlier, with the lots of ers and ums, and purposeful pauses, which are designed to aid communication. The less you do of the former, the more effective will be your use of the latter. So let's take an example. You're speaking to a patient, and you're saying to the patient, the first step would be to refer you to a dietitian. We can then get the same specialized advice and a diet plan for you. After that, we can meet in a few months to see how well you've been managing your weight. Now, you're speaking there at a rapid pace, but it doesn't seem natural. It doesn't seem effective because you're not using pauses. Pauses help to organize your speech, just in the same way discourse markers do. So let's imagine that same utterance, but with effective pausing. The first step would be to refer you to a dietitian. We can then get some specialized advice and a diet plan for you. After that, we can meet in a few months to see how well you've been managing your weight. Can you hear the difference? Hopefully you can hear that in the second case, the information is much easier for the patient to process. You're choosing where to pause, and in choosing where to pause, you're indicating to the listener exactly how they should be listening and which words and phrases are most important. This is an important aspect of fluency. So as a summary, don't let accuracy kill fluency. If you make some grammatical errors in your speech, you can still get a high score in the OET. You don't have to speak absolutely perfectly. But if you're trying to produce 100% accuracy and you sacrifice fluency as a result, then you cannot get that B or above when it comes to the OET. Self-correct, a little bit. It's a way that you can improve your accuracy without sacrificing fluency. But as stated before, don't do this all of the time, because then you do start to sacrifice the message of what you're saying. Link your ideas using discourse markers. Show the interaction between different ideas. Is it contrasting? Is it adding to? And finally, pause, but with a purpose. Show your listener where they should be listening, which information is most important.